So hello, good afternoon, everyone. We'll get the show on the road. My name is Gertrude Nonterah, and in 2015, I graduated with my PhD in microbiology and immunology from Temple University School of Medicine. And I had a great experience as a PhD student. I had a great experience as a postdoc at UC San Diego. But somewhere along the line, I realized that academia was not for me. And so here we are, and I'm going to share a little bit of that story and how I ended up with the career I'm currently in, and share a little bit about personal branding and how PhDs, and even if you're not a PhD and you're on here, grad students, master's students, MBAs, anybody can really use all of these principles I'm going to share with you to build a personal brand so that you can actually land in the place that you want to land. Okay, so I'm going to start with a share screen. Can you see my screen? I think you can. Okay. Okay, so building your personal brand as a PhD, or like I said, otherwise, I already kind of introduced myself. I'm Gertrude Nonterah. I'm a scientific content specialist at CG Life. CG Life is a life and health science marketing agency. Oh, okay, it's a life and health sciences marketing agency, and I am a scientific content specialist. That's just a really fancy name of saying I'm a scientific writer, and I currently write content for all these larger than life life sciences and health companies that you may see out there. Now, how did I end up in this role? This is not something that necessarily gets advertised every day, and one of the ways I did get through personal branding. Now, I shared a little bit about myself, but here's another picture of me and my family. We live in San Diego, California. This is our son. And yeah, and I realized once I finished my PhD, once I got into my postdoc and realized that I wasn't as excited about academia as I thought I would be, I began to explore other options. And that I began to explore, or what I began to do, was really build a presence on LinkedIn. And so I got on LinkedIn. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had gone to a conference and somebody had talked about LinkedIn and using it. And I was like, okay, let me try to just put myself out there on LinkedIn and use it. So I went on LinkedIn, I created an account, and I started to interact with people. If there were jobs I was interested in, I would follow people that were already in those roles and try to learn as much as possible as I could from them. Eventually, what ended up happening was that I started a freelance writing business. Towards the end of my postdoc, I started a freelance writing business and began to just write scientific content for companies on a freelance basis. Fast forward to 2020, the end of 2020, I did get offered a role with CG Life, and here we are. So how did I go from academia to getting into scientific writing? And because the reality is that no clear-cut path to go from your PhD to a scientific writer. In most other professions, there's a clear-cut path. You have step 1, 2, 3, and then there's step 4, right? But how do you go from academia to this? And it was through LinkedIn. It was through building my personal brand on LinkedIn. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So why I'm talking to you today, okay, to just show you how powerful LinkedIn is. LinkedIn is the reason why I have spoken at 2 other universities this year. I spoke at Temple University, my alma mater, and I also spoke at UC Irvine just in March of this year. I have another conference I'm going to be speaking at, and I'm speaking today. And none of those opportunities came because I have a PhD. They all came through LinkedIn. So when I tell you that LinkedIn is a powerful tool, right, to build a personal brand, even beyond your jobs, okay, because I did get my job through LinkedIn by building that personal brand on LinkedIn, but there are other opportunities that can open up, build your personal brand. So what is a personal brand? Because I've been talking about it for a few minutes. What is it? So there are several definitions out there. I think I like this one. A personal brand is a widely recognized, largely uniform perception or impression of an individual based on their experience, their expertise, their competencies, actions, and or achievements within a community or industry or the marketplace at large. So let's break that down a little bit. widely recognized, largely uniform perception, right? So you don't need to be known by a million people. You just need to be known by the right people. So I would modify this definition to say widely recognized. And actually, towards the end of this definition, the sentence I want to the thing I wanted to modify is that widely recognized within a community, right? So if you work in you are a chemistry major and you want to get a job within the chemical industry, right? You should be widely recognized within the chemical industry. If you want to continue on in academia, right, you need to build a network of individuals that allow you to continue on that path, right? So having this widely recognized, largely uniform perception in people's minds of you based on your experience. And all of us on here have some kind of experience. Even if you're just a first year graduate student and you're on here, you have some kind of experience. There's some expertise you bring to the table. You definitely have a lot of competencies and achievements, right? Even if you don't think you've published a paper, there are things that you have done within your specific community, all right, that you can become known for, okay? All right, so that's what a personal brand is. And a personal brand doesn't just exist in science. If you think about any other industry out there, I chose these ones because they're sort of my favorites. Tennis, I really do enjoy tennis. I like football, which in America is called soccer, but then it's football. And then I also do like American football, and I'm a scientist, right? And so in all of these three arenas, there are people that usually come to mind when we think of that particular so in tennis, I always think about Serena Williams. I think about Rafael Nadal. I think about Roger Federer, right? When you think about football, you may think about somebody like Messi or Ronaldo. You may think of these folks because they've built their own unique personal brands within their fields. Science, we can think of so many names that people may not necessarily know those people because they're not into that industry, but people within that industry know who you are. Okay. And the main thing you want to be able to do with your personal brand is become memorable enough that when opportunities come up, people think of you and say, oh, I know somebody who can do this, based on what I know about them, I want to recommend them because I have seen their work online and I think they would be perfect. And actually, that's exactly what happened to me before I landed my role at CG Life. I had been interviewed, and initially I didn't get it. There was somebody else that got that role, and the director of content called me and was like, because it was really unusual, right, to have to be turned down for a job, but then to be called back by the director of content or by the director of the department. And she said, I really loved everything about you. It's just that this person seemed to have a little bit more experience. So I'm going to keep you in mind. And if a role ever opens up, I'm right. And that's exactly what happened. A few months later, another role opened up, and I was the first person. They didn't even advertise the role. They just came straight to me and said, hey, do you want the role? There's a role for you. And I said yes. Okay, so you want to be memorable enough that people think about you and people think that you are the perfect candidate for this role. So I've kind of already talked about why you need one. All right. Now, I want to emphasize on this because I just told you my story of being offered a role that was not even advertised, a really great role, a really life dream job kind of role, right? Now, how does this happen? Now, this article right here is on npr.org and it's from 2011, but I think it rings true even 10 years later. And in this article, there is a statistic in there, and the person says about 70 to 80% of jobs are never advertised. They are like I got my role. My role was never advertised. I was offered that role purely based on my LinkedIn presence or just by building a personal brand, right? And so 70 to 80% of jobs are not advertised. And usually When jobs are advertised, there is an internal candidate that has already been considered. How do I know? It happened to me before. Again, for another role that I had applied for, I did not get that role. And later on, I spoke with the person that was hiring in that role, and they said, oh, we already had somebody, but we needed to post it for posting's sake. So sometimes you're out here applying for all these roles that have been posted online, and yet they're internal candidates or candidates within people's networks that are already being considered. And this is what a lot of people call the hidden job market, right? The hidden job market. There is a whole job market out there that is not being advertised. And if you, I heard this a long time ago, and I want to share it, and it sounds a little silly, for people like us that are academics, but I realize it's really, really true that you need to play the game that's being played. Okay, there is a game going on around you. You have to recognize it, and you have to play the game. And the game is that 70 to 80% of jobs are not advertised. So you have to build your network. All right. And these are also, these two statements here are stuff that I heard from people personally. This is not hearsay. I didn't read it in an article. There was a leading global biotech, and one thing that they said was, if you apply for a job with us online, there's only an 11% chance that you're going to get a job here. But if you know somebody here who can vouch for you, then that chance increases to 89%. Okay. Then, or 80%, I forget the exact statistic. Then over here, I spoke with an HR person at a large university in California, and she recruited specifically for their medical school. And she told me, faculty for their medical school, and she said, we hardly ever hire people that have not been recommended by another member. And the last time we did that purely based on an online application, the person quit. It did not go well. So we never do that. And it really highlighted for me the point. Okay, so you stand to get job opportunities, collaboration opportunities when you build a powerful network. So how do you get started? Okay, all right, the way you get started is to really take stock of who you are. Who are you, right? Who are you, and how do you want to present yourself to the job market that is out there, to that hidden job market, to begin to build your network? As you begin to think of who you are, these are questions I'd like you to answer. You can get a piece of paper and write this down. You probably already know this, right? What's your academic background, right? You advanced degree, whatever that is. I have a bachelor's degree in biology, and I also have one in nursing, and then I have a PhD in microbiology and in immunology. That's my academic background. If you do research, what's your research focus, right? And especially right now, where scientific research and medical research has been, more than ever been in the news due to the pandemic, right? If you work like me in the world of life and health sciences, huge, because you can tie a lot of your work to what people are actually seeing. I've had more people ask me questions, more people send me text messages about, what do you think about this? Should I get a vaccine or not? What do they mean when they say this, right? So you are, if you work in this field, I don't think everybody works in this field, but if you do, you are in a place where your voice is important, and more than your voice being important, the voice for your community. So if I'm an African immigrant, and there's a community of people who think everything is a hoax, and maybe there's nothing like COVID-19, and adding my voice, right, or contributing to the conversation allows them to see that maybe the stories are not so fabricated, right? Maybe you've published work, centered work, anything that you've done, any achievements that you have, take stock of that, your hobbies and your interests. Okay, so it's not all about being serious. I happen to work at a company where our hobbies and interests are very much front and center, so it's good to share that a little bit if you can. And also the kinds of roles that you possibly are looking for, you can also have that as part of your personal brand. When I'm a scientific writer, like I told you earlier on, I was a freelance writer, and so I put that very boldly on my profile. I said I was a freelance health writer, and very helpful for me when I was getting the current role that I have. So you really need to think about who you are. And this is just a selection of, of questions to answer about yourself that you can begin to put out there for other people to see. So I remember when I was looking for this role, I was also interested in becoming a medical science liaison. And so these were two roles that I kind of talked about and engaged with on LinkedIn. Okay. Talked about LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm going to delve into it a little bit more, but you can also build your personal brand on a place like Twitter, or you can have your own website. Twitter is also really big in the hiring world, and I've seen people leverage those to build their personal brands to become very well known in their arena, and therefore harness opportunities. Or you could build your own website. There are people that have done YouTube channels, people that have done podcasts. You don't have to do all that. You can just choose one of these to build your personal brand on. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute and just see if there are any questions or comments. I'm also going to do, if there are none, then I'll just go straight to showing you a little bit about LinkedIn and show you can begin to set up your LinkedIn. If you haven't set up already this way, how you can begin to set it up to set yourself up for success. Okay. So I will log on to LinkedIn, and then if there are any questions, I'll answer those. Which applications are you using to build your personal brand? So mostly I have built this, my job, and almost every other opportunity that's come to me in 2021, even starting in 2020, has come because of LinkedIn. So I do focus on LinkedIn quite a bit. I also have a YouTube channel. I'll share that later. Okay. I'm going to share LinkedIn with you. Okay, so here is LinkedIn, and I'm going to click on my profile. So with LinkedIn, there are a few things. Now, LinkedIn used to be the boring platform, right? It used to be the platform nobody cared about, super boring. But no, it's no longer like that. Okay, so maybe you heard me say LinkedIn and you're like, LinkedIn? Yes, LinkedIn. So here is my profile, and of course I have my name and title. To fill out, make sure you fill all of this out, and I'll tell you why you want to fill everything here out. Now, profile, if you haven't created an account, if you have created an account, once you create a profile, you should be able to have this pen here that you can click, put your name, if you have, you can now choose your own pronouns. And then the headline, okay, this is what I want to dwell on a little bit. The headline is really important. So I put in here science writer, I have a podcast, and I have a YouTube channel. All right, so I put all of that there because it all shows up. Okay, and then my current position is as a content specialist, my education, all that, fill that out. Now, the reason why your headline is super important is because of the search function on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a search engine. Thousands of recruiters every single day use LinkedIn to search for people that they potentially could hire. Okay, all right, so make sure you fill that out. Now, if you right here, I have LinkedIn Premium. I pay $29 a month for it. You don't have to pay $29 a month for this, but when you do, it does give you some insights into who is looking at your profile and if what you're doing on LinkedIn is actually working. Okay, so over here, this thing I love to look at. It says 161 search appearances. Okay, and so I'm going to click through that, and this between July 27th and August 3rd, it says my profile appeared in search 161 times. Who were the people that were looking for me? There was UC Irvine, higher education. I've worked in that field, so that's relevant. Cisco, that could also actually be relevant to what I do. A government administration, AstraZeneca, pharmaceuticals, that again is my field, news information systems, right? And then you'll see that you'll also get to know the roles in which these people who are searching for somebody like you work. Product managers, executive directors, there's some student looking for professors, a founder. What keywords was I found for? I was found for writer. Okay, so it's really, really important that you choose the words that you want to be found for very carefully. So for instance, if you want to get a role as an R&D scientist and you are not an R&D scientist in industry, for instance, just an example, you could put in here aspiring R&D scientist or looking for R&D scientist roles or something with R&D scientists, because when a recruiter comes and searches for people that they probably search, they probably type in R&D scientist, you do want to get found in that search algorithm, okay, as somebody that could potentially be employed. All right, so putting the exact titles or titles, yes, let me put that, say that the exact title that you want to be found for is important. I definitely want to dominate search for being a scientific writer, and there are people who are looking for me as a writer. Okay, it tells me that it's working, and you don't get that insight unless you $29.99 for LinkedIn Premium. But again, you don't have to. If you do all of these things I'm sharing with you, you should get found. Okay. And just yesterday, August 9th, this person here was a recruiter. They had messaged me about a role in San Francisco, and I had to turn it down because I don't want to move to the Bay Area. So how powerful it is. And there have been other things like that as well, other opportunities that have come in my inbox like that. So this is not a fluke. It really does work. Okay. Once you're able to fill this top here, make sure to have a good picture of yourself. This picture is a little dated, so I had to change it. A picture that kind of looks like you, at least. Have a picture there. Don't leave it. Sometimes I go on people's LinkedIn profiles and there's no picture, or the picture is really blurry and I can't see their face. Let's have a picture of you. And you don't have to wear a suit, but let's have a good looking professional picture of you. Okay. And then usually the header, you can put whatever you want there, but I have my website there, so anybody that comes to my profile knows to go to my website. Okay. All right, apart from this area, this profile area where you're going to make sure you fill out and especially optimize for keywords, okay, you want to make sure, we're going to scroll down a little bit past featured and activity, I'll come back to those, to go to the about section, okay? So in the about section, you can also write information. There's also information you can put there. Do not leave this blank, please. Again, we are optimizing this to be found in search so that we can begin building our personal. Leave this blank. But anyway, I basically shared the story about me loving my PhD but not wanting to go through with academia, right? And then I talk about how I'm now a scientific writer, and then I also talk about the YouTube channel I host and other services that I provide. So all of this is there, and I say you'll regularly see me post about freelance writing, science writing, entrepreneurship, personal development, and other alternative career paths for academics. So anybody that's interested in that kind of stuff, they will follow me. And then if you kind of run a business on the side like I do, this is also a great place for you to put your business information, right? But if you're just looking for a role, just talk about yourself, right? And why somebody would want to work with you. What's so unique about your work and what you've done so far in area that would be compelling for people to employ you. And here's the thing, I find that a lot of academics, we sell ourselves short and tell ourselves we haven't done anything phenomenal. And let me just pause for a minute and say that this is not true. A lot of us have done amazing things, okay? A lot of us have done amazing work. In doing amazing work, but the thing is that we live with it so much that we don't realize that we're doing amazing work. Okay, so now in my role as a scientific writer, my PhD was on the microbiome and the microbiome in the gut and how that regulates gastrointestinal homeostasis. And right now in my role as a science writer, there's a company that we are working on pitching, and my PhD background is becoming very front and center because there are a lot of people interested in the microbiome and researching how that regulates health. Because there's a lot of research out there that our microbiomes are actually more fascinating than we realized, right? A lot of that work going on, and so highlight your work, right? Talk about how it applies in the larger grand scheme of things. All right, think about that. Okay, so there's some great questions here. It says, Myra says, what are your suggestions for building a brand if you're trying to make a career transition and your experience was mainly in a previous, or you're interested in two different roles that do not necessarily overlap? Such great questions. So many questions. So I'll answer the first one that says, what are your suggestions for building a brand if you're trying to make a career transition and your experience is mainly in one role? So if your experience is mainly in one role, I want you to sit down and really think about how some of those skills, okay, so yes, it was a different role, but how do some of those skills translate to the kind of new role that you want to get into? Okay, let me give you an example. For about a decade, I worked in academia as a researcher, right? First as a PhD student and then as a postdoc. What on the grand scheme of things, on a macro level, what I had mostly done was research. I had just done mouse models and created mouse models of diseases and studied mouse diseases, human diseases and mice. That's that on a macro level. That's what I had done. But what were some of the other skills I gained along the way? I gained writing skills. I gained data analysis skills. I gained the skill of presentation. I gained a lot of other skills. The skill of insert it, right? So in whatever role you work before, on a macro level, yes, you this, but on a micro level, what were some of the things that you actually gained on that journey? And then think about how those play into that new role. So when I wanted to transition from research into scientific writing, at that point I had written multiple papers, right, that had been published. So I was able to say, hey, I published multiple papers. And then I had also been a freelancer. I had written just a couple of articles for other people. I leveraged that. So do not think that because you have been in a particular role on a macro level, on a micro level, there was nothing else you gained. There are things you learned. Sometimes it could be even some kind of obscure software, and you don't realize that that obscure software that you know is going to be central to your role in this other position that is completely unrelated to this other position. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So I would say, look, sit down. It's not so easy sometimes, but sit down and take stock of the skills that you have. If you're interested in two different types necessarily and overlap, that's okay too. What I did in those instances, I created two different resumes for those two different roles, and I spoke about both topics. Right? I just demonstrated my knowledge on both, or whatever knowledge I had. Or when I wanted to be my medical science, I realized it involved way too much travel for my liking. I would engage with other MSLs online. I would chat with them. I would ask to talk to them. So you kind of don't say, because I'm looking for medical writer roles, I'm not going to look for MSL roles. You can look for any one of those roles. You just have to create different. You won't be able to create different personas online necessarily, but you can create different resumes, and you can. I'll talk about this later, about cultivating those relationships, and you can do that for multiple roles, so you don't have to stick to just one. Stephanie says, I have a question. I really enjoy verbal, in-person, and virtual science communication in front of an audience. What would be a good way for me to leverage these skills for my brand as a neuroscience postdoc interested in joining academic industry? I love this because I'm a little bit animated, and I love video and podcasting. So I would say that if you are somebody that loves science communication in front of an audience or camera, maybe start a YouTube channel. Maybe start, right, that where you talk about topics in neuroscience. or what you're learning in your neuroscience research right now. And there are many other, once I started creating YouTube videos, I realized how many other PhDs and medical doctors and professionals that are creating videos around their industry and end up blowing up careers, right? Not blowing up in a bad way, but blowing up in a good way, right? Their careers because they talk about the industry. So if you are this person, don't wait for somebody to give you, I'm a very don't wait for somebody to give you a stage, start your own stage kind of person. So that's my advice. I realize not everybody is like me, but if you are even just a little bit like me, then start your own stage and talk about the stuff you're interested in. That's what I'd say. And then when you go to apply for opportunities in academia or industry, right, where appropriate, sometimes it's not as appropriate in academic settings, I find. Industry, you can actually highlight that and say, I have a YouTube channel where I provide educational content on neuroscience topics, and able to do with that. So that's just an example. Create something that showcases your work. That's where the market is moving towards, more and more. I find in every role I've interviewed for after my postdoc, I find that they love people that take initiative to start things when it seems like everybody else has the same resumes. Everybody else has a PhD. Everybody else has a master's degree. What makes you stand out? And maybe the thing that makes you stand out is that you have a YouTube channel and people actually watch your neuro. That's just my thought on that. All right, so I will continue because we're almost, I don't want to run out of time. All right, so you want to make sure that you filled out your profile. You want to make sure you filled out your about section. And then what do you actually even begin to post? And then your experience, right? So fill that out, your education, fill all of it out. Don't leave anything blank, okay? This is important if you want to, get found and also begin to just build that personal brand, okay? So going back to this, right? All right. So what do you post about on LinkedIn, right? Okay, Gertrude, I started on LinkedIn. What do I post about? Talk about your publications. I know that especially when we work in the research world, sometimes your PI, your advisor may want you to keep the work you're doing under wraps until it has come out as a publication. Please respect that. Don't post anything that is not supposed to be posted. But if there's something that's publicly available, share that, right? Maybe something that you learned from that experience. What's an uncommon insight you learned from that, right? I've seen all kinds of things that people have shared, and that's just based on, something that they learned in the lab. Is there some news around your subject area of study? There's a lot. If you work in the life and health sciences industry, there is so much news around our industry right now, right? And so you can share that. Recently, I shared a post that was on stat.com, and it was Stat News. And Stat News is a big medical life sciences website that shares daily posts and news in the medical world. And I shared a post because it talked about how some of the COVID-19 vaccines were beginning to expire in some states, and yet there were countries around the world that did not have access to vaccines. And interestingly, that morning I had spoken to my father, who lives in Ghana and West Africa, and he me that they had been able to get the first dose of the vaccine but couldn't get the second because there were no vaccines to be given. All right. And so I shared a little bit about that. That sounds a little political and it's a little controversial, but I did share on it. And yeah, not everybody would enjoy that, but it is something I care about. It's my industry. I care about it, and it's actually affecting people in my family, right? So if there are news around your subject area that you care about that you can share, and then you can have an opinion about, all right, whilst respecting other people's opinions. Okay, other people's posts, you can share those events in your industry. Are you going to a conference, virtual, or I know some of the in-person conferences have been canceled, but if you do go to a very well organized, socially distanced conference, maybe you can share some of those events, lessons from something you're reading or something you watched or something you read, anything. And then you can also craft insightful comments on other people's posts. There have been people who have reached out to me and said, I like this comment you made on this other person's post. It wasn't even my post. It was like somebody else's post. And commented on that and somebody found me. Okay, so you can do that as well. So these are some of the things you can do on LinkedIn. You don't have to post cat videos, you don't have to post funny memes, you don't have to do any of that. You just really share authentically who you are, what you care about, the work that you're doing, and it does resonate with people. Okay, now one of the biggest things that I got from building my personal brands is this thing called an informational interview. An informational interview is when you set up a meeting with a professional in a specific field and you talk to them shortly about their field. It could be that you set up a Zoom call with them, or you simply send them an email with 5 to 10 questions. Don't overload them. I one day had sent me like, I don't know, like a whole list like of questions. I'm like, I can't possibly answer all of them. But like 5 to 7 questions that are really important to you, you can craft those and email the person. Not everybody is going to respond, right? But that's okay. Now, the way you can begin to get an informational interview is actually for you to, and I'm gonna go back on LinkedIn and show you really quickly how you can do that. When you go into the search bar, let's say you want to become a medical science liaison, you would type in medical science liaison, okay? And then once you do that, you can look under people. So you click on the people. When you click that, you'll see all these people show up, right? So all these individuals. What I would do then is to click on, and you can actually even filter by location. So let's say that you filter by, I live in California, so I'm gonna filter by that. So there are 33,000 results for people who have medical science liaison potentially in their title, who live in California. Now, if I was really interested in this role, what I would do is go through this list and send connection requests to these individuals or follow them. Then after I follow them, I would go ahead and send them a really short message. And usually when you're sending a connection request, right, you are allowed to send a message along with that connection request. And you can just say, hello, my name is so-and-so. I see that you are a medical science liaison at this company, and I'm interested in the career. And I was wondering if I could just ask you 5 questions. Usually, I find that, let's say 3 to 4 out of 10 times, people will say, yes, you can ask me these questions. Or some people I've even taken Zoom calls with people I've never met. Okay, so people have just entered my DMs, mentioned that they want to talk to me, and I've scheduled a 15-minute call with them, and they've asked me their questions, and I've happily answered them. So you can do something like that. And on an informational interview, what you really want to do is get your questions answered about the profession, right? Getting your questions answered about the profession, there are a few questions that you can ask. There's several questions out there. Actually, just before I came to present, I just typed in questions to ask on informational interviews. You can just do that and find a bunch of questions. But here are just a few of them. Okay, what does a typical day look like? You land your current role? What would you say the best trait is for people who end up in this role? What trait makes people successful at this job? What don't you like about this job? What kind of decisions do you make on a daily basis? What advice would you give to somebody seeking this job? Okay, and I find that when you do this, people are more than willing to share their career journeys and with you. And also what ends up happening is that you fall on the person's radar. So let's say this person is a medical science liaison at a pharmaceutical company. You're interested in their career. You took, an informational interview with. One of the things that you can do right after the interview, after you've asked them your questions and they've answered, is to actually let them know that you're looking for roles, and that if they know of any role within or even outside of their company, they should let you know. Also, don't forget to thank them. If they give you the time of day and they answer your questions via email or even take a 15-minute call with you, please make sure to thank them. It's just a good way to build goodwill. But what ends up happening is that you fall on this person's radar. And if you are on this person's radar and this person is like a good person, okay, hopefully, then when roles do come up, they'll be able to say, oh, you know what, there was this really great girl that or guy that I took a call with the other day. Maybe I should talk to them about this role if they're still available and interested. And you could get a role that way. Okay. So one of the best things about LinkedIn has been the fact that I have been able to do, and people have done it with me, informational interviews. Okay. You learn so much. Trust me, you learn so much. It gives you a headway into the industry, and it does really put you on other people's radars. All right. So that's endeth the talk. I will take any more questions. Okay. Yes, somebody said, do you feel it is worth it to purchase the premium LinkedIn membership? I do. I do, because it gives me insights. Looking for the data or those analytics, it's okay if you don't get it, to be honest. You still get a lot of features on LinkedIn without the premium. I get it because of the insights I get, and also you can send more LinkedIn mail with the paid. There are a few features, so you can look at those features and see if you would want that, and then take that on. How can we access this presentation? Mary, so I can actually, that would be a Mary question.
Well, Gertrude, if you'd like to share it, we can make sure that people get it. And we also are going to have the recording of this. But yeah, great presentation. Sorry, my video quit right before you started, but it seems like you got going okay.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, so what I can do is, if you follow me on LinkedIn, and then you just let me know that you came to this talk and would like to get the slides, I will send it to you.
Cool. I'll just pipe in on the link on the premium. It's only really worth it for me when I'm wanting to send emails to people I don't know. Yeah. And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize, if you are a member of a group that someone else is in, you can send, most of the time you can send them a message for free. You have to do a little wrangling, but most of the time I don't pay for the premium. I just kind of try to get around it. But
yeah, absolutely. So I agree with Mary that there is really little difference between the free and the premium. But for me, I just like to look at the insights and the data, and people that have kind of come to look at my profile, just because I also run a business and I want to get those insights. So if that's not you and you're just using it for job, I would not. The free LinkedIn will work just fine, right? So yeah, Neda or Nida, I don't want to butcher your name. If you want the presentation, the slides, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to get that to you. Great. Well, I had one more. If there are no more questions, I am accessible. I'm not too hard to find in the world. I have a website, theboldbiomed.com. You can find me, Gertrude Nonterah, PhD. I just showed you that. I also have a YouTube channel called The Bold Biomed, and I create videos for graduate students to slay grad school, and also for them to navigate the career market after the fact. If you'd like to subscribe to that, you're more than welcome to. And thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also consider inviting Dr. Nonterah to speak at your organization, I would suggest.
Yes, I'd love that. Lashanda had one more question here. So she said, what is the best place to look for multiple types of opportunities if you're looking to making a transition? What's the best place? LinkedIn is a great place. LinkedIn is how most of my opportunities have come. I've applied for jobs on Indeed.com and websites like that. It never really worked out. The places where I've gotten the most responses have been LinkedIn, especially in this biotech world. A lot of people are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and we also have for all of the California hubs and also Boston, we have job boards. So
Right. Yeah, the Biotech
I
networks
like
also.
to plug that. Yeah,
Yes,
sdbn.org, sfbn.org. So they're not hard to find.
yes. All of those are, yeah. Mary does a great job.
Well, thanks everyone. I think if you want
Yeah.
to, I can see the back end, and there's some booths that have openings. If you want to try to get one more chat in for the jobs. Speaking of jobs, you should have enough time. I don't think everything's going to magically shut down in 13 minutes, but it might. But thank you, Dr. Nonterah, and everyone watching.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invitation, and bye everyone.
Bye.